So this will be part two, Memoirs of the Secret Services of John Macky, Esquire, during the reigns of King William, Queen Anne, and King George I. Now we know King George I was a so-called black man or Negro, including also the true secret history of the rise, promotions, and of the English and Scots nobility officers, civil, military, naval. So I'm going to go to page 25. Court of Great Britain. Daniel Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State, is eldest son of Mr. Finch, Lord Chancellor in the reign of King Charles II, which is a so-called man of color. This gentleman never made any considerable figure till the Revolution, when he zealously opposed King William's coming to the throne, yet was made Secretary of the State by that prince to oblige the church, of which he sets up for a mighty champion. After about 3 years serving this Pope, the jealousies or jealous of the people of his being in a French internet or intertwine, I can't pronounce that word, obliged the king to throw him out again. He opposed the adjuncture of the Prince of Wales to that degree that he shed tears. The bill passed, yet took the oath on the Queen's ascension to the throne and was made Secretary of State. 26. State again. But the jealousy of the people still continuing in the House of Peers, showing their afflictions. If I can't even pronounce that word. Excuse some of my pronunciations. This is kind of hard to read, this old English. In the affairs of the Scots plot, he laid down the seals. He is a jealous promoter of absolute power in the state and implicit faith in the church to that degree as hardly to be in common charity with those of more moderate principles. Here we go right here. He has also the exterior air of Bethel's, an application enough to make him very capable. In his habit and manners, very formal. A tall, thin, very black man. I repeat, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew. So he was a Negro, right? About 50 years old. As you can see, I highlighted it again. A tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew, about 50 years old. Now we're going to look at the picture. As we can see, here's a fake white portrait of Black Daniel Finch, 2nd Earl of Nottingham, the 7th Earl of Winchelsea, if I'm pronouncing that right, 1647 through 1730. We know the King James Bible was transcribed at 1611. You know, black nobility was still in Europe, but they give you this. This is what they call white supremacy or white rulership. Okay, I mean right here, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew, about 50 years old, and this is what they give you. Like they give you a white Jesus. So right here, we're gonna go to Charles, Duke of Somerset. Okay, page 17. This is his description. He is of a middle stature, well shaped, a very black complexion, a lover of music and poetry, of good judgment, and by reason of his great hesitation of his speech. So this was a so-called man of color. Okay. Go to page 19. John, Duke of Buckinghamshire, Lord Privy Seal. Okay. Let's find his description. Probably need to go to the next page. Here we go. He is a noble man of learning and good natural parts, but of no principles, violent, of high church, yet seldom goes to it, very proud, insolent, and convictious, and takes all advantages, in paying his debts unwilling, and is neither esteemed nor beloved. For notwithstanding his great interself at court, it is certain he has none in either House of Parliament or in the country. He is of a middle stature, a brown complexion, a fore lofty look. Okay, so he was trying to highlight this. So I just highlighted he was a brown complexion. Okay, so we have right here, nature knows no color line. Okay. Negro ancestry in the Anglo-Saxon race. Let me see. As was said, there is evidence that Negroes or Negroids lived in the British Isles in prehistoric times and in the Middle Ages. From the 15th century onwards, there is abundant evidence of them. Negro slavery was introduced in England about that time and lasted until 1773, and probably even until 1834, when there was a general emancipation in the British Empire. How many blacks came during those centuries will probably never be known. There must have been hundreds, not millions of thousands, and however, there were enough at least to cause a considerable mention in the English literature. Plays and pictures, Eva B. Dykes, The Negro in English Romantic Thought, Cypher's Gimya, Captive Kings, Notes, Inquiries in the Drawings at Gainsborough, Kent, Zophe, Hogarth, Smith, Cruikshank, and Rowlands, and some of the many sources that show their presence. Okay. So right here we have Thomas Tufton, Earl of Thanet. Of the name, Tufton was born a fourth or fifth brother and was in years before he came to the honor of Iftate. He improves his estate greatly, which he is very considerable. He is a very good country gentleman, a great aptor of the prerogatives of the monarchy and the church, a thin, tall, black, red-faced man turned up 50 years old. So he was a tall, black, red-faced man. Okay. Edward Montague, Earl of Sandwich. Right here. He was a gentleman of house to the prince, of very ordinary parts, married the witty Lord Rochester's daughter, who makes him very expensive. A tall, thin, black man, about 35 years old, like myself. I'm 35. There you go, a man of color. Once again, a tall, thin, black man, about 35. Okay. So right here we have more Black Britons, characters of the nobility of Scotland. Okay. Donald's a Scottish name, right? I'm not talking about Donald Trump either. All right. So we're going to go to page 180. And this is James, Duke of Hamilton. All right. I see how he's described. He is a gentleman of good estate, a fine natural deposition, but apt to be influenced by people about him, has a general address, much the manner of a man of quality, of FD, Assels, thin, of black complexion, turn of 45 years old. Okay, so Mr. James Duke of Hamilton was a man of black complexion, or swarthy. And as you can see, they give you a fake whiting of the black James Hamilton, first Duke of Hamilton, by Wenceslas Hollar, the National Portrait Gallery of Britain. All this is white live. You see that? This is a fake portrait. So we got to remember, this is the memoirs. So he's given the description of the actual people he encountered, and they did not look like this. So we go to page 186, characters of the Marquis of Twiddle, a branch of the ancient and noble family of Hain, son to that of Marcus, who was a comforter or commissioner of chancellor at the Pevy of the Darren Company Act, a great encourager and promoter of trade and the welfare of his country. He has good sense and is very modest, much of a man of honor and hot when pictured. He's highly esteemed in his country and may make a considerable figure in it now. He is named by the Queen to be Lord High Chancellor, a short, brown man towards 50 years old. So we go to the National Portrait Gallery, and this is supposed to be him, right? But does he look like he's a short, brown man towards 50 years old? No, they pictured him as a so-called white man. First Maccabees 3:48, you know, they changed the image. And we can see they did this globally, right? Of every culture and different customs and whatnot. So we're going to go to page 191. This is probably the last one. Earl of Roxburgh is representative of the ancient family of Kerr near the borders of England, and son to that Earl of Roxburgh, who was going to Scotland with the Duke of York in the reign of King Charles II, so-called man of color. He is a young gentleman of great learning and virtue, knows all the ancient languages thoroughly, and speaks most of the modern perfectly well without pedantry. He's a fine gentleman and lives up to his quality, has a good estate, is handsome in his person, brown complected. I repeat, brown complected, or brown complexion, about 25 years old. So we go back to the National Portrait Gallery. This is Robert Kerr, 4th of Roxburgh. And look how they got him as a so-called white man. But clearly in the letters, the memoirs of Mr. John Macky describes Earl of Roxburgh as a brown complected or brown complexion, like my color, right? But look how they got him. And you wonder why we don't take their history serious, because there's a bunch of narratives and full of lies and contradictions. Look at this. This is a joke. And not to get confused, some people might think complexion might be their hair or their eyes. No. So this is the etymology of certain words. Complexion, mid-14th century. Natural disposition of the body, from Old French, complexion, completion, combination of humor, hence temperate character, makeup, etc. Okay. So let me see. The specific meaning, color or hue of the skin of the face. I repeat, the specific meaning, color or, the specific meaning, color or hue of the skin of the face. Developed by the mid-15th century in medieval physiology, the color of the face was believed to indicate the temperament or health, meaning a man of color. Okay. So, you know, this old Well, they could have been brunette hair. It was talking about the hair. No, they was not talking about the hair, because this is what it says right here. Brunette of a woman, right here, dark in complexion, having a brownish tone to the skin and hair. I repeat, of a woman, dark in complexion, having a brownish tone to the skin and hair. 1660s from French, brunette. So this is words we have to look for when we're reading this old literature, because most people just think white people or Caucasians, okay? But it says brownish, brown hair, dark complected, okay? Just like when you think of the word Messiah, most people just think Jesus Christ. But when they read the scriptures, you know, there were many Messiahs, King David, King Solomon, etc. It means anointed one with the oil, the king, the priest, etc. So we have to look at these words and get the, you know, the correct definitions. But you can see history is full of narratives and lies. As a noun, woman with dark hair and eyes of a dark complexion from 1710. I mean, there you go.